2chan, more commonly known in its home country as Ni-chan, cause that's the number 2 in Japanese, was basically the precursor to the better-known 4chan in the West. Ni-chan is like 4chan, only it's not. While the two are both anonymous boards and have their share of infamous images, creepypastas, and general insanity, 2chan had a very unique landscape that is a fascinating reflection of Japanese culture and the mindset of its citizens, of whom live in a society that greatly values conformity, civil duty, and reservation in demeanor. With that said, allow me to introduce you to a brand new series where we explore 2chan's most renowned and/or infamous topics in Japan. In this series, we're going to be looking at the creepy, the creative, and the bizarre. While 2chan in its original form no longer exists, and there's a lot of history there that maybe I'll get into in another video, there's a lot of posts that are infamous and well known today that really shaped Japanese meme culture in, Japan. 2chan was influential in preserving Japanese pop culture of its era, but today the opportunities in experiencing a little taste of Japan are even easier thanks to the use of VPNs. And with that, I would like to thank today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. Little known fact about me, I love Yakuza films. The works of Takeshi Kitano are a must, but one of my absolute favorites is 1986's Gokudo no Onatachi. Now, finding Showa-era Yakuza films is a bit difficult on American streaming services, but in Japan, on their versions of streaming sites like Netflix, well, that's another story. While Gokudo no Onatachi is obscure as heck overseas, it's a classic in Japan and easy to find and watch thanks to Atlas VPN. And for only $1.83 monthly, too. Not only do I get Japanese media at my fingertips, but peace of mind knowing I'm secure with the protection Atlas VPN provides. Grab Atlas VPN for just $1.83 a month plus 3 months extra before this big deal expires. Link will be in the description and pinned comment. Starting off the video is a bit of slang commonly used in Japan. One the creator of the Yakuza series of video games actually got in quite a bit of trouble for using. Let's back up a bit. Cheese gyudon, aka Chigyu, is a type of beef bowl or gyudon, a very simple yet popular dish in Japan that is exactly as it sounds. Thinly sliced beef over a bowl of rice, sometimes with raw egg cracked over it or some veggies mixed in. So, like I said, Chigyu is short for cheese gyudon. It's a standard beef bowl topped with cheese. Only, the term Chigyu itself has a lot more meaning than that in popular culture and is often associated with otaku or nerds. I guess it's kind of like how gamers, quote-unquote, are associated with Doritos and Mountain Dew in the West. I mean, if somebody said they look like they eat Doritos and Mountain Dew, you'd probably get the point, and, that would probably be an insult. So, in Japan, if somebody says that a person looks like they eat Chigyu, it means they look like a nerd. This is slang often seen on 2chan and is heavily associated with this infamous image that was created in 2008. It depicts a nerdy young lad ordering a 3-cheese beef bowl. Now, Toshihiro Nagoshi, he created one of my absolute favorite video game series in the whole widest world, that being Yakuza. Seriously, if you haven't played Yakuza 0, it's... During a live stream in July of 2020, one for a Puyo Puyo tournament, a clearly bored Nagoshi was asked his thoughts on the show and the entrance. After saying he didn't really know what to say and kind of fumbled with his words a bit, he said the entrants look like they eat Chigyu. This perceived insult resulted in Sega apologizing publicly for the comment and some of the players in the Puyo tournament posting photos of themselves eating beef bowls. Those out there familiar with my Do Not Search Iceberg series of videos may already be familiar with Inunaki Tunnel, a very real location in Fukuoka Prefecture which was the setting of multiple murders. Inunaki Village is an urban legend that came about in the wake of the tragedies that took place in this tunnel. While the story of Inunaki Village itself dates back as far as the early 1990s, it really gained traction on 2chan when the story was passed around and users even claimed to have visited the location itself. While the story itself dates back to as far as the early 1990s, it really gained traction on 2chan when the story was passed around and users even claimed to have visited the village itself. Inunaki Village is said to exist on a small side road you see after going through Inunaki Tunnel. Which side? Who is to say? Perhaps the road appears before you upon walking through the Inunaki Tunnel completely, which may be difficult to do in the present day as it is now almost completely sealed shut. According to legend, the village itself does not recognize Japanese law or even the Japanese constitution itself. If one visits Inunaki Village, you're essentially entering a lawless land without any sense of morality. There are many different versions of this actual narrative available online, the most famous version being a very early form of creepypasta, though at its core is referred to as a kowai hanashi, or scary story. This story goes as follows. In the early 1970s, a couple was driving to Hisayama, a city also within Fukuoka Prefecture. During their trip, their car unexpectedly breaks down in a desolate area surrounded by forests near the eastern base of Inunaki Mountain. With no other choice, they exited the vehicle in search of help. Eventually, while following a small road, they see a sign stating that the Japanese constitution would not be recognized beyond that point. The couple took it as some kind of prank and nothing more. With that considered, they continued onward. Upon reaching a small village, they assume it was abandoned some time ago as no people were around. The couple was just about to turn around and head back down the path they went down before being stopped by a crazed elderly man. He welcomed the couple to Inunaki Village before pulling out a sickle and attacking them. As far as the outside world, the world that knew this couple understood, the couple in question was simply never seen or heard from again. There is another, less popular variant of this story, one that claims that a call is made to a telephone booth near Inunaki Bridge one time every night. It is said that if somebody answers that nightly call to the phone booth, they will be transported to Inunaki Village and cursed. Upon arriving, they will slowly lose control of their mind and body from this curse. The legend of Inunaki Village is well known in Japan and left a lot of online users searching for the village and trying to figure out where it would be placed on a map. Weird thing is, a real-life Inunaki Village did actually exist in Japan. This real-life equivalent predated the legend, the tunnel, and the murders that occurred in the tunnel. Having existed from 1691 to 1889 in what is present-day Miyawaka City after the village itself grew and merged with the surrounding areas. This one single emoji. One that may look innocent and cute to all you here watching this video is synonymous with one of the most notorious 2chan threads in the entirety of 2chan's history. This thread, originally titled, "Help! The girl I like won't respond to my emails," starts out simple enough. OP is asking for advice because he emailed a girl he's interested in and never received a response. Keep in mind that email can refer to text messaging as it was referred to as meru in Japanese, similar to how meru is also referred to as emailing. So emailing and texting is kind of synonymous going forward. I will mention that a few more times as the video goes on. Anyways, OP refers to this girl as Denko for privacy's sake. Because 2chan is anonymous, most people just flat out say she's not interested or that OP is likely ugly, and that's why OP is not receiving a response from Denko. OP insists that there's more to it though, and that he's known this girl since high school. OP personally thinks that Denko and him feel the same way about each other, and they've been talking pretty regularly in college. But then, the dude, OP, just casually includes this response that's like, "Oh, I only sent her 600 emails so far." This is when the people in the thread realize that OP is really obsessed with Denko. Everyone in the thread just kinda started ignoring OP and at one point started talking about ramen, something 2chan is known to host discussions of, but in this case they were just trying to not respond to this unnaturally obsessed person. It does not end there though, and oh golly, I sure wish it did end there. OP then goes on to describe some pretty cringe examples of the conversations he had with Denko in the past before deciding, you know what, you guys are just being mean to me, you're just not trying to help me. I'm going to call Denko directly now, before losing his nerve and then hanging up before he even talks to her. As the thread continues, the responses just start messing with OP and trolling him and just making the whole situation a whole lot worse. Making suggestions on what OP should do, and it just kinda becomes a big old meme on the site. We do get a little bit of backstory from OP about his time with Denko in high school, as well as him saying he got a hold of her on the phone, and then he asked her on a date, and he was rejected. But OP sure did not see this as a rejection, and the situation continued to escalate. It's often been speculated and debated upon regarding whether or not this story is actually real due to how ridiculous it is and how it kind of drags out. And honestly, this thread is kind of terrifying for the sole purpose of it potentially being very, very real. This is because it provides a clear look at the mentality of a stalker. So this thread goes on for a long time, so long in fact that I kind of felt myself losing my sanity after reading through the bulk of it. By the way, link to a translation of the full thread will be in the description. Eventually, OP lays it all on the line for Denko because he assumed she did not understand that he was interested in her at some point during the 600 emails, and he says he's interested in Denko romantically directly and is very clear about that. Which then leads to Denko directly rejecting him again, saying, "Don't email me anymore." OP takes this as Denko wanting to instead talk to her outside of email, like in person. As time goes on, there's a few more other threads because OP keeps going on and on and on about how he doesn't understand why Denko is ignoring him, which eventually results in a quote-unquote friend of Denko, and I use the quotes pretty heavily here, selling Denko's information to OP for about the equivalent of $550. This $550 fee included Denko's current email as she kept changing it over and over again. It's awful. This whole story is awful. I really hope it's fake. Following a really disturbing in-person encounter where he hugs Denko from behind and she understandably screams and tries to get away from him, she later rejects him one more time in person and tries to have him promise that he will stop trying to contact her or be around her in any way, shape, or form. And now, time for the surprise plot twist ending. The whole Denko saga ends with OP going out with the friend who kept selling Denko's information to him. But, much like everything else in this thread involving this friend who is referred to as Akko charged OP to date her. And how much did she charge him? Apparently the equivalent of $8,000 and possibly more following this. Because you see, that is the last we ever heard from the Denko Saga OP, and this was many, many years ago. If you're an anime enthusiast and existed on the internet during the mid to late 2000s, you may have seen this bear around during that time period. This bear is known in the West as Pedo Bear. Now, despite its namesake and unsavory intentions in the West, which was popularized on 4chan, the 2chan origin of this character is strangely more wholesome. It began as a single-line kaomoji, a little bear face with kuma kuma written in hiragana next to it. Kuma simply just means bear. It eventually evolved into this much larger text-based line art of a bear running with the word kuma written in katakana next to it. The purpose of this bear on 2chan is to be posted in response to people fishing for attention on 2chan threads. See, the joke is that the bear is eagerly running to take the bait and get the attention of the previous poster. That's really it. At least before the West got a hold of kuma and made this image and, made it very unwholesome. In 2016, a blogger wrote a post describing a video they recalled seeing on 2chan at least 10 years prior in the early to mid-2000s. They explained that it was supposed to be a link claiming to lead to an adult video, but instead loaded a disturbing video that stuck with them all these years later. So, what was in the video? The blogger went on to describe it in their post. The quality was apparently horrible, and they described seeing disjointed cuts of a woman with a disfigured face. Then a shrine before cutting to a girl lying in a box with a person standing next to the box holding a knife. The video is then said to feature looped footage of the girl falling out of the box before finally cutting to a short of the disfigured woman once again from before. The blogger claimed that they revisited 2chan's occult and horror forums asking if anybody knew about it, but nobody seemed to know what they were referring to, nor did they recall it. The blogger in this blog post also did provide a 2005 thread where they think this may have included the video, but the link in the thread is now dead. Many in this thread warn users not to click the link with the video unless they were ready because it was apparently pretty disturbing. Looking at this 2005 thread, whatever video was in this link received a lot of attention and upset during this time. Unidentified or lost media was a very common topic of discussion on 2chan, the notorious Hirogata PSA, as well as the Akihabara tape being two very early and famous examples of this. To this day, that notorious video has not resurfaced. However, fellow YouTuber Tara A. Devlin has uncovered a video from about the same time with somewhat similar cursed imagery. Go ahead and check that video out for more info, I'll leave it linked in the description. Yet another bizarre thread that just kind of spiraled out of control. Unlike the Denko Saga, where the issue is clearly defined almost to an infuriating degree, this one is kind of hard to pinpoint. And this time around, in this thread, it's actually the confusion that leads to the frustration. I'll try and give you guys the abridged version. There's really a lot to unpack here, much like the Denko Saga thread. A man, OP, had just proposed to his girlfriend and she said yes. The couple was a little tight on money at the time, so they had just decided to delay the actual wedding and go straight to registering the marriage legally. For the entire time the couple was together, OP had assumed his fiancé's legal name was this one specific name. He even recalled seeing this name on a class roster when the couple attended class together in college. While OP admitted that he often used a nickname when referring to his fiancée and even had the nickname saved in his phone, he was almost positive that her real name was something completely different to what it actually was when she signed the marriage papers. The name OP had assumed, one that he dubbed Hanako Sato within the thread, was instead a name that was in no way similar or easily confused with Hanako Sato, one he described as sounding somewhat obnoxious. He dubbed her actual name Elizabeth Ijuin in the thread. Keep in mind, these names are not the real names, they were just for privacy's sake and to make the situation a little more distinguishable. But despite this, OP swore that he saw the name Hanako Sato on that school roster all those years ago. He even recalled his fiancée recognizing that name on said roster as her own name. So, what on earth was going on? A very confused OP decided to bite the bullet and just ask his fiancé himself. This exchange had the fiancé very confused, basically saying, "What are you even talking about?" and just kinda dismissing it. And it's time for this already really confusing thread to get even more confusing, like, who was Hanako Sato? As the thread title suggests, OP felt like his fiancée Hanako was suddenly replaced with this Elizabeth person. It was at this point that OP began having a bit of a crisis. He claimed that, looking at old photos, he didn't even recognize the face of his fiancée, that she suddenly looked like a different person. Like, literally. That Hanako was in the old photos and Elizabeth was suddenly here in real life replacing Hanako. OP claimed that the girl in the old photos was Hanako and that the girl in the recent phone photos he had was Elizabeth, but both girls had the same nickname he frequently used to refer them as. OP dubbed this nickname Chiwa. OP felt as though he merged with an alternate dimension where he was with an Elizabeth now, not Hanako anymore. The other posters in the thread asked various questions, like if he had any memory disorders or if the nickname sounded like Elizabeth in any way. Some even asked if his fiancée was Korean or Chinese because there are cultures where some people genuinely have two separate names. Some just joke that the fiancé must have stopped wearing makeup at some point, but OP insisted the change in features was far more drastic than that. The conversation slowly shifted to people asking OP more directly about any history of mental illness. It seemed that a lot of people felt they should hone in on that specific aspect as OP continued to panic. The whole situation just didn't make any sense. Some people did hone in on their time in college. OP had mentioned that the fiancé was in a rakugo club, rakugo being a type of traditional Japanese stand-up storytelling. Some also recommended contacting friends who knew both the fiancé and OP in college. And so, upon asking a college friend, OP claimed he never heard the name Elizabeth Ijuin in his life, that being the friend never heard it, and that the fiancé's name wasn't Elizabeth to his recollection. OP continued to add that he showed an old photo of his fiancée to be sure to his friend, and his friend still said that was Hanako, that was not an Elizabeth. So that convoluted the situation a bit more. The confusing situation continued, with OP even considering to go to the hospital to be evaluated because people just kept suggesting that. This is something he did consider, but flip-flopped with actually doing, and he felt that he wasn't mentally unstable or that was the issue. OP eventually updated the thread by saying he recently met up with yet another college friend and got some drinks. He brought the old photos and his friend confirmed that these were in fact photos of his fiancée. That the old Hanako photos were definitely photos of the now Elizabeth. The friend was baffled that this was even a question that OP even asked, and also recommended that OP see a doctor. But then, OP came home a little drunk that same night and told his fiancée about the friend. According to OP, the fiancé apparently didn't remember this friend at all. OP also asked his fiancée about the Chiwa nickname and how that came about and its origin, and her explanation was the same as OP remembered. The facts regarding the nickname did still add up. However, despite all of this, OP confirmed that he was still very much in love with his fiancée and still intended to marry her despite all this chaos going on. And now we come to the conclusion. OP was later confronted by two friends who asked to see more photos, both old and new. These friends did confirm that the girls in the photos, old and new, were the same girl. That Hanako was Elizabeth. OP didn't believe them and didn't see the resemblance, but then the friends pointed out that the fiancé was wearing the same necklace in the photos. That the only thing that was different was her hairstyle as she had changed it. The friends then asked OP if he had ever heard of a condition called prosopagnosia. For those out there wondering, this is a condition where those afflicted cannot recognize a person by their face. Following this post, OP claimed that his fiancée was confronted by OP and his friends that same day, and was now saying her name was Hanako Sato. There's a bit more of a back and forth, and OP claims Hanako Elizabeth doesn't recognize herself in the old photos either. But it's here at the end of this whole thread where the story is far more disjointed and confusing. OP's posts definitely seem more disjointed and frantic. Ultimately, OP thanks everyone for listening, doesn't really confirm what his plan of action is now, and he just kinda dips. This is the last time the OP is officially heard from on 2chan. He's never heard from again. Now, many people have many theories about this thread, and once again, I'm really abridging the whole ordeal. It's very confusing if you read through the whole thing organically. It could have all been fiction, of course, but if not, then OP may have had some kind of mental disorder or emergency health situation that caused all this. This is a meme originating from 2chan, the root of it being this face. You may have seen it before. And by looking at it, you may also have a good guess as to why this face has that expression. Even the Japanese phrase associated with it, Yaranaika, makes things pretty obvious if you know what that means. The phrasing itself translates to, "Do you want to do it?" And by it doesn't mean anything safe for work, I assure you. The face itself blew up in popularity on 2chan as well as outside of Japan, though the origin of the image itself predates the internet a bit, as it comes from a 1987 one-shot yaoi from an issue of Barakomi, a magazine in Japan geared towards gay men. The title of the one-shot itself isn't even safe for work, actually, the title being Kuso Miso Technique. I'll let you Google any words that aren't understood here. I don't know if I can explain this on YouTube, it's kinda just Google it. The manga itself involves a college-age man who has a chance encounter with another man, seemingly a mechanic, at a park. They then go at it in a public bathroom. One of the panels from this specific scene is where the infamous face comes from. Now, this manga was relatively unknown up until 2002 when a 2chan user posted scans from the Barakomi issue to the boards. People soon became fascinated with the manga specifically, and the full one-shot was later uploaded in full due to this interest. The full upload did not take place until 2003 specifically, however. Following this, the Japanese internet had a field day with it, and by field day, I mean created a lot of memes. Eventually, Nico Nico Doga got a hold of it, and the memes continued to circulate throughout the mid to late 2000s. So much so that the face made its way to sites outside of Japan, and the manga itself was translated by users online. You can find that online, I assure you. There is a vast variety when it comes to art style in anime. While it may not seem like it, art trends and styles have both evolved and expanded in Japanese comics and animation. Some are breathtaking, realistic, and gritty. Others soft and iconic, distinguishable and recognizable. Sometimes so unique and recognizable that you can name the creator just by looking at the characters they created. Despite the plethora of different art styles in anime and manga, the cutesy big eye style known as moe remains prevalent even today. Especially today. And especially within Japan, where anime that look like Idolmaster and K-On! Kind of dominate the scene. Cutesy, childish moe girls are very popular, and it is with this in mind that the homunculus disaster known as Moetron was given life. Moetron, also known by her intended name, Kime Kona-chan, was conceived directly in response to a famous troll on 2chan known as Konashine in 2009 or 2010. During this time, the 2007 anime Lucky Star was still very popular, and many people often discussed this anime and shared fan art of Konata, the main character. Konashine really hated Konata for some reason and would leave hateful comments on anything relating to Konata specifically. This caused artists to troll back by drawing various objects with Konata's attributes, specifically the blue cowlick of hair that she was known to have. This phenomenon continued until Kime Kona herself was born, her name being an abbreviated form of Chimera Konata. This image became popular on both 2chan and 4chan, people starting to create their own fan art as well as devising a canonical personality for Moetron. Or rather, personalities, as Moetron is described as having dissociative personality disorder and yandere tendencies. It's also worth noting that Moetron is a name that came about on 4chan, and Kime Kona was kind of the name that came about on 2chan and is her original name. This is another meme that all the early to late 2000s Japanese cartoon enthusiasts may be familiar with. It's definitely one I remember seeing a lot as a teen. To begin, School Days is an anime that aired from July to September of 2007. It's based on a visual novel of the same name and is known for its unsettling and unexpected endings to the story. The finale of the anime itself featured one of the game's more gruesome endings. Days prior to the scheduled air date of the School Days finale, an incident involving a young girl murdering her father with an axe had occurred. This very real situation was deemed far too similar to the contents of the School Days finale, and the finale itself was not aired on the date and time it was supposed to be aired on. What was shown instead? Boat footage. A lot of boat footage. 30 minutes worth, in fact. Basically, a half hour of stock footage featuring boats with easy listening music playing over it. This ended up outraging fans that stayed up and tuned into TV Kanagawa for this long-awaited finale. A lot of these outraged fans were actually outside of Japan and discussed their dismay on the English-speaking 2chan first. While much of the discussion consisted of fandom outrage, it's this one single comment accompanied by a screen cap of one of the boats that is cited as the creation of this meme. One screen cap of what was recognized as a Norwegian ferry, the comment next to it simply reading, "Nice boat." Beyond this, there wasn't much of a meme on 4chan itself. It wasn't until 2chan users caught wind of this thread, particularly the "nice boat" phrase, where things really took off. People began making memes and edits of the specific boat image with the main character of School Days exclaiming "nice boat." A lot of fan art came about too, and the creator of School Days themselves even named their Komiket booth "Nice Boat" one year. Komiket is a really big convention for doujinshi creators, by the way. A similar incident occurred in 2020 as well, when an episode of a completely unrelated anime was cancelled and replaced with boat footage. A 2chan user created this thread upon receiving a series of terrifying letters in their mailbox after returning home from a business trip. None of these letters were addressed to the original poster, instead being addressed to a man they did not know by the name Asamu Sakuto-sama. The speaker of the letter uses the Sama honorific at the end of this person's name. This is usually reserved for a person of very high status or even a god. Included in this initial post was an image of all the letters they had received by that point in time, 5 in total. Some of the letters were folded in strange, ornamental ways. None of these letters had stamps or the address written on them. They weren't even sealed in envelopes. The only reasoning behind this being that the sender must have hand-delivered these letters themselves. What was deemed the first letter detailed the writer recently getting out of the hospital. Despite this, the bulk of most letters made no sense and had no flow or clear understanding. One portion of this letter stating that the speaker remembered exactly when they met this Asamu person, and that her eyes turned completely white in order to read Asamu's mind. Also, that she constantly heard a song playing around her. There's also a bit that mentions her quote-unquote pets, though this is never clarified and it kinda seems like they're not her actual pets. Much like the contents in the other 4 letters, OP had shared photos of every letter they received, each one being signed by a person who referred to themselves as Rera, written in English characters. While all of this in itself is unsettling, what may be the most unsettling element of this first letter is this. A self-portrait that Rera included with that first letter. The second letter was even more confusing and disturbing. It included yet another self-portrait, this one of Rera unclothed with 4 separate legs, and an eye on her abdomen as well as her hair. Included were more disjointed phrases and Rera claiming that she was overwhelmed by feelings of resentment because she felt somebody watching her every day and night, even while she was sleeping. Rera also complained that she was surrounded by trash, quote-unquote, and that Asamu soon would be surrounded by trash as well. Most people in this thread agreed that Rera was definitely unwell and had some extreme obsession with this Asamu person. In the later letters, Asamu was later referred to as Asami. It's unclear if this was a typo or not. In these later letters, Reira goes on to explain that she sees a doll in her room looking at her and moving, and she also has an urge to eat ink. She also mentions having a husband, and possibly having seen Asami a previous December. It is unclear how long ago this December was. Curious about this Osamu person, other posters urged OP to speak to his landlord and see if they were the previous tenant. OP later claimed to have done so and that his landlord had never heard that name before. However, the leasing company was able to find complaints from the previous tenant relating to unpleasant letters. And the tenant before that? They had apparently complained that they were being harassed by someone. Then came more information. Contact info from the mother of the harasser of that tenant. Her daughter was apparently hospitalized following this harassment incident, with the mother apologizing on the daughter's behalf when it had occurred. It was with this new information that the leasing office was able to get in contact with the mother once more. It was here where it was confirmed that it was Reira's mother. Apparently, after hearing this new information about the letters, Reira's mother called to check on her daughter. She first contacted Reira directly on the phone, and Reira became defensive and hung up, denying everything. The mother then called Reira's fiance. He did share that he recently bought Reira some new stationery that matched what these letters were being written on. But he was working so often that he wasn't able to keep tabs on Reira and often left her home alone. The mother contacted the office once again, saying she would be driving to visit her daughter in person and address all of this. Meanwhile, those in the thread asked OP a barrage of questions, trying to figure out the situation, though some also felt that OP could be just making it all up. The mother updated the office once again. Apparently, Reira had left home and nobody knew where she went. This wasn't exactly a good sign for OP, as Reira could be going back to his home. Turns out that's exactly what she did. A few hours later, OP updated the thread, hearing aggressive scratching and banging on his door. He ignored it and called the police straight away. Said police showed up long after the scratching and banging had stopped. Following this, he met Reira's mother at the police station and both agreed to questioning regarding the situation. Reira's mother shared that Osamu Sakoto was the screen name of a person Reira had met on an online dating site many years ago. Following this questioning, OP checked the mail after returning home to find one more letter. He provided a photo of it. It only had one single phrase written in the center of the paper, "Mata kuru ne," or "I'll return." It was in pink ink and signed by Reira. With that, OP had dealt with enough and, like the previous tenant, decided to move. It was shortly following this decision that OP said he was already looking at a new place and that his story and the letters were unfortunately very real. That he wished this whole ordeal wasn't real. And with that, we never saw a follow-up. If this story was real, OP likely moved, and hopefully Reira received further help. Kisaragi Station may very well be the most renowned topic that originated on 2chan. While creepypasta enthusiasts may be very familiar with this story, the actual thread that inspired it is rather interesting in itself. For the original thread was not a completed story. It was an actual back and forth between a seemingly lost poster and concerned people engaging with her in the thread. The original thread had surfaced in the year 2001, with a poster who referred to herself as Hasumi, who believed she was lost and got on the wrong train on her way home from work one evening. Hasumi was very confused about where she was. The train was not making any stops, it hadn't for quite some time, and all other passengers around her were asleep. On Hasumi's typical work commute, there were many stops and she was very familiar with its patterns. This time around, it was very different. People within the thread were intrigued, trying to get details about where she was so that they could pinpoint it and help her get home. This thread was created very early in the morning when only a few people were active on the site. One poster suggested going to the car that held the train conductor in it. She did so, but said there was a curtain covering that area and she couldn't see who was operating the train itself. Hasumi claimed she had knocked on the window in an attempt to speak to the conductor, but nobody responded. Another suggestion was to look out the window to see signs from any station they had passed. This was when Hasumi described going through a long tunnel. She also later clarified that her usual route didn't have any tunnels and that she departed from Shin Hanamatsu Station, which is a real station in Shizuoka Prefecture. Before long, Hasumi updated the thread yet again and said the train had finally made a stop. She looked outside the train to see a sign that said Kisaragi Station. Nobody in the thread had ever heard of the station name before. Those who Googled it said nothing came up. They urged Hasumi to stay on the train until reaching the final stop on that line, as there would likely be taxis available at the final stop for her to get home. Hasumi instead got off the train to look for more information. During this brief period, the train left her. She was the only passenger to get off. Hasumi then added that she contacted her parents to pick her up, but they were also unsure where Kisaragi Station was. She had also added that one of the kanji used in spelling Kisaragi Station was also the kanji for devil, making it appear as though the station name read Devil's Station if it was read incorrectly. Hasumi left the station and saw no roads or traces of civilization. She then decided to walk along the tracks. This was when she heard the sound of taiko drums in the distance as she walked. Shortly following this was someone shouting at her to get away from the tracks. She turned around and saw an old man behind her with only one leg. This man quickly disappeared. The sound of drums grew louder as Hasumi came across another tunnel and went through it. She then met a man at the other side who offered to drive her to a hotel and then claimed they were near a town called Hina. With this, Hasumi claimed the man was muttering to himself in the car. She felt uncomfortable, and her phone battery was running out. Hasumi concluded that this would be her last post, and it was. Now, while Kisaragi Station is pretty chilling as a scary story, many feel the story may have had truth to it, and that Hasumi crossed over to another dimension or even the afterlife. People have tried figuring out where Kisaragi Station would be on a map as well, and it was this story's creepypasta status in the West that makes it so well known today. Much like Moetron, this is another genre of cute anime girl fan art that came about on 2chan. Only the gimmick with these girls is that each one represents a different computer operating system, hence the OS in OS-tan. The tan is like a shortened, cutesy, childish version of chan. This phenomenon dates to as far back as the year 2000 and the launch of the Windows Me, which was a really buggy and unreliable operating system that came out in the time between the Windows 98 and Windows XP. 2chan users began joking that this operating system reminded them of a clumsy and forgetful anime girl. Someone who's kind of well-meaning but also very ditzy. Because of that, they started drawing Windows Me as a gijinka. This term is for art that humanizes non-humanoid things and is very commonly used in fan art. Mitan, the very first OS-tan, was officially created in 2003 when the first fan art of her publicly surfaced on 2chan. While the popularity of these characters skyrocketed in the early to mid-2000s, interest waned in the years following. Despite this, OS-tan equivalents have been made for every Windows operating system to date. There's even a supporting cast of OS-tans made for web browsers, antiviruses, and other devices like the Amazon Kindle. And this concludes my first episode looking into the weird, mysterious, and creepy things that came about on 2chan. This is the first of many. I have many topics I want to talk about, and if you have any you'd like to suggest, please feel free to hit me up in my business email, social media, or even just the comment section down below. With that, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now! And last but certainly not least, I would like to give a huge shout out to all my beloved Patreons. Thank you so much, guys. This includes Chumpkins, Jaded Elf, Jolie Medea, Armando Duran, Rora Morasso, Ella S, Lena SD98, Gur Elad, Eli L, Nikki, Flo Ami, Pada, Ashley Rigby, Meek, Nicholas Babinu, Mercedes Slaughter, Beebles32, Sid Nepp, Eli Roca, Life on Mars, Greedy Guts 78, Lilia Grasso, Metal Mario 64, Courtney Von Schriltz, Misao, Dr. Money $69, Nicole Turkowski, Alice Rose, Akali, Anna, Sophia Gillespie, Megan Nicole, Vonnie, Mike Masterer, Judy 18, Felix Gonzalez, Alan Achondo, Oddish Gloom, Momo Buns, Mr. Anderson, Michiru Oji, Otonya, Angel Pena, Lilo, Brandon Tran, Andrew Valencia, Eels, Dude Bro, Jolliser Plays, Beastmen Manor, Mirotichi, Aurora Phoenix, Lauren Marcello, Lilycat, Merlin Caliber, C Chameleon, Jean_187, Digital Dubs, Omar Ruelas, Coffee Red Fox, Raz Cohen, Shivam Vashi, Daniel Barrientos, Pan Fried Life Jacket Awareness, Nicholas Allen, Sutagio VGM, Adam Mitchell, Joka, Anigger J. Reese, Donut Brewitt, Leon X8, Teofil Zieta, Christopher Valencia, Hilary, Erica, Justin Fuda, PP Pastiskatag, Quetzalcoatl FC, Andrew LaPena, VHS Vitch, Airfire, Grand Tactician, Good with a Stain, Kevin, Jojo, Orlong the Dog, Soko, Jody Kirk, Ambi Shonen Knife. Once again, thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate every single one of you, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Bye for now.